Hi everybody, my name's Andrew and today I'm driving a new FL5 Honda Civic Type R. Prior to today, I've driven basically every other modern sport, compact, hot hatch, whatever you want to classify this as, except for this one. I've driven all the Volkswagens, I've reviewed the Type R, or the GR Corolla, excuse me, I've driven the old Type R off camera, Elantra N, Veloster N, you name it, but this is the last one I haven't driven until now. And I must admit, I was excited to check this thing out because I wasn't the biggest fan, to be honest, of the old Type R. Mostly for the way it looked, but also it just felt kind of cheap inside, and you know, it wasn't my favorite car necessarily. But this one has fixed a lot of that. It's a lot more grown up, both in terms of styling and everything else. So let's go ahead and check it out. Whereas the old Type R just looked like it was trying a bit too hard, this one is a lot more mature and thought out. There's no fake vents. Well, these aren't actually vents anyway, but there are ducts through here that are real. These are real vents right here. The wing, I think, doesn't look like it's as much tacked on anymore. And obviously this car is not subtle. You know, I'm partial to this blue. I think this blue really works, but you know, it's not like the Germans where you can't really tell that this is something special. It does look way more special than a regular Civic, but it's not overdone. It's clean, it's a lot more mature, like I said, and honestly, I think really good looking. Something else I like, and this really applies to all of this gen Civic, not just the Type R, is that it is, of course, still a hatchback, but it looks from the side pretty much like a sedan. The Civic hatch and sedan of this generation have almost the same side profile. You wouldn't even really be able to tell unless you put them side by side, and I like that. Hopping inside, the first thing you're going to notice, of course, is the bright red seats, and although this one has all-weather liners, the bright red carpets as well. These seats, in terms of design, are visually fairly similar to the old Type R seats. However, Honda went at great lengths to explain at this car's launch that they are drastically different somehow from the old seats. Either way, all I can tell you is, hopping in them, they look incredibly aggressive and honestly don't feel too bad. They're actually super comfortable personally. The bolsters on the bottom are pretty tight, so if you are a wider or larger individual, you probably will not find the bottom of these seats very comfortable, and you may have trouble getting in and out over these things, but they do hold you in very well. And despite being fully manual, they do have pretty aggressive lumbar, which is kind of nice. And I don't know, I really don't have any complaints about these seats. I quite like them, actually. As for the rest of the Type R's interior, if we just fire it up here, the majority of it is pretty much the same as the regular Civic, aside from trims and such. Obviously, lots of Alcantara throughout, of course, on the seats as well. But the dashboard layout and everything, and steering wheel, is virtually identical to the regular Civic lineup. The exception of course, in the middle being this shifter right here, which, despite looking maybe a little suggestive, does actually feel really nice. I'll talk more about this in the driving portion in just a second, but same screen as the regular Civic, wireless CarPlay. It's going to connect here in a minute, but no complaints there, really. I do like this digital gauge cluster as well. It has a couple different layouts. There's the sort of classic layout, and then if you put it in R plus or individual mode, you get this with a whole bunch of information in the middle there. So I always like to see that. I don't really know, I think, yeah, there's a wheel here on the steering wheel that controls the side portion there. But yeah, the one thing I do have to say is that the interior, the dashboard anyway, is not very driver centric. As you can see, it's pretty flat, and none of it is really slanted towards the driver at all. Like the screen, in comparison to some other cars, it almost feels like it's slanted away from you just because it's flat. So that takes some getting used to. And that's kind of one way that you can tell that this isn't anything more than just a Civic at heart. But, you know, honestly, the interior feels nice. The plastics aren't bad. The dash is all soft touch. The doors, like I said, are all Alcantara and soft touch. The steering wheel's leather wrapped. It's super nice. And, you know, really no complaints in here. I just don't know that it's worth $45,000 in here. I mean, but that's something that a lot of these cars in this class struggle with. That's something I talked a lot about with the Audi RS3, because that car is like $60,000 and the interior is not drastically different from an A3. You know, it's something that is fairly common with this type of vehicle, but you know, this one does fairly well with it. Unfortunately, there is quite a bit of cost cutting in the back seat of this car. Interesting thing that I just noticed, there's actually not a center seat here. You just have a couple of cup holders instead, and there's no center seat belt. Unfortunately, if I flip that around, there's actually no fold down armrest back here either, or air vents for rear passengers, or charging ports, or really any amenities at all. And the materials are noticeably cheaper back here as well. The back of the front seats does look kind of cool though, with the Type R badge. And there is plenty of space back here. You know, I've got a little bit of space to stick my feet under the front seat, which helps with the fact that the seat bottom is pretty high off the ground, or pretty low to the ground, excuse me, so my legs are up in the air, but plenty of room. And honestly, you know, if this was where I was sitting for a longer drive, I don't think I'd really complain, as long as I had a way to charge my phone. Once you get this out on the road, however, it is pretty clear that it's not just a regular Civic. For one, it definitely sounds a little bit different than a regular Civic, and it's considerably faster, because in contrast to the regular Civic's 1.5 liter turbo, this has a 2 liter turbo 4-cylinder, producing 315 horsepower and 310 foot-pounds of torque, which is good for a 0 to 60 time, I believe, in the high 4s, or maybe about 5 seconds. So what's interesting is it's actually not really any faster than the Elantra N or Veloster N by Hyundai, despite making more power and torque. So that's kind of interesting. Granted, those cars are available with a dual clutch, and this is manual only, so that may be where some of that comes from. But either way, it's plenty fast enough, trust me. And you got shift lights in the gauge cluster here that come on from about 5,700, 6,000 RPM or so, right up to red line. So that's kind of cool. I don't think the Golf R or Elantra or any of the other cars in this class have separate shift lights like that. So that's pretty neat. In terms of sound, it's kind of disappointing, to be honest. The old Type R was pretty quiet stock, and as far as the actual engine and exhaust in this one, it really hasn't changed that much. They claim it is a little bit louder on the outside, but from in here you can't really tell. But that's also partly because you can't really hear much of anything other than fake engine noise coming from weirdly sounds like just the front left. The fake noise is pretty overbearing, and for whatever reason, like I said, it doesn't sound like it's very evenly distributed. I mostly only hear it from the left. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't actually sound that bad. It's just, it's not real. Like, you know, on the other hand, Volkswagen, they, instead of just piping noise through the speakers, they also include something called a sound actor, which is essentially just this little thing that sits next to the firewall and just vibrates a bunch. But honestly, that gives off a deeper tone typically, and I think sounds better. And then on the full extreme, you have the batshit crazy stock exhaust on the Hyundai products that isn't legal in California. So this is definitely on the quiet side relative to those cars, but you know, like I said, it doesn't sound bad. It's just not real. The other thing I can hear in here, I don't know if it's going to get picked up on the microphone at all, is something over there. I don't know if it's the seat or something in the door is squeaking like freaking crazy, and it's really annoying. I don't know what it is. This car only has 10,500 miles on it, so that's not a great sign either way. And that may just be this particular car too, but anyway, the good news is the rest of the driving experience is really good, actually. I have driven the previous Type R in a very modified format, so it's not exactly the greatest comparison, but either way, stock versus stock, this one is quite a bit more refined than the old Type R, for better or worse. It's a lot more grown up, which maybe is why they didn't really make it any louder. But yeah, the rev matching's decent, actually. Speaking of, the stock clutch in this car is very high. It's weirdly high, but it's not bad. It's better than the GR Corolla's one. And the stock shifter, despite looking a bit odd, like I said before, does feel pretty nice. It's pretty short, and the metal shift knob is always kind of nice, except when it's 20 degrees outside, or 90, as I've experienced in my personal Miata previously. But anyway, I do like this car a lot. It's good. I know that's a really insightful review, but you know, it's not my favorite in the class by any means. I think the Elantra N and Veloster N are way more fun. They're way more exciting, just from a, you know, kind of silly, childish point of view. The noise is a big part of that. And the Volkswagen products tend to be better rounded than this car. They've got a little bit more features for the price point. Like, this car doesn't have heated seats or anything really. I mean, it's got dual zone climate and wireless CarPlay and a couple of safety things, but that's about it for 45 grand. And this car also rides really, really rough. I mean, I know all the hot hatches really don't ride the greatest. They're all pretty firm. You know, personally, I like that usually, but this one, even in comfort mode, is very bouncy. So I'm not a big fan of that. So I think if you're gonna daily one of these cars, this is still dailyable easily. You know, it's still super practical. And if you can live with the bit of a bouncy ride, it's fine. But the Volkswagen products are definitely better rounded, and the Hyundais, despite Hyundai's reputation, are probably still what I would pick personally. And as always, I want to extend a huge thank you to Echo Park Raleigh here in Cary, North Carolina, for allowing me access not only to this Type R, but their entire inventory here of high quality, competitively priced pre-owned vehicles. This is obviously far from the first car I've done from them, and hopefully far from the last as well. I always enjoy coming and filming what they have to offer. So if this car is still available by the time this goes out, you'll find the link down below. And if you found this video enjoyable or informative, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for plenty more videos to come.